There we go.
There you go.
Okay. This week's movie is
Boys and girls. The movie this week was Fog of War, a 2003 release as a documentary featuring interviews, archival footage, particularly using the Interatron, allowing director Errol Morris to record but retain eye contact with his subject, Robert McNamara, or Robert Strange McNamara.
Mm-hmm.
The film covers his life from his birth at the conclusion of World War I through his 85th year, particularly focusing on events as McNamara moved from academic pursuits to corporate promotions to become CEO of Ford Motor Company, the first non-family Ford family member to do so, to public service 5 weeks later as Secretary of Defense beginning in 1961. His period of service included the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Gulf of Tonkin conflict and resolution, and finally the Vietnam War. It also includes the pre-atomic bombing of Japan or firebombing of Japan as Defense Department analyst working with General Curtis Bombs Away LeMay. Some of you remember him from his vice presidential run with George Wallace. Some of you may not, Jeff Arthur.
And Jeff, he was played by who was it? F. Scott, whatever his name was. He in hell, I lost it all. But Jeff, when you did Who Dropped the Bomb or whatever that movie was that Kubrick did.
Oh yeah.
Who was the guy that played LeMay?
Was it George C. Scott?
You're thinking of George C. Scott. Right.
Thanks. Thanks to
How
Memory
I Learned to Love
Theater.
the Bomb.
Anyway, LeMay was responsible and co-blamed McNamara for the destructive fire bombings which killed tens of thousands in Japan pre-atomic bomb, and alluded in the movie to how they would both become war criminals if they were to lose. The value of winning, I suppose. Last week, I asked you guys to view this with a critical eye. I personally found McNamara's truths to be highly self-aggrandizing. McNamara claims Kennedy wanted to roll back participation in the war. Johnson wanted to accelerate it because of Johnson's belief in the domino effect in Southeast Asia. What I liked about it was really the Interatron and how Morris, as a movie, was able to look at McNamara. What I hated about it was I don't believe a word McNamara says. I didn't 50 years ago. I don't today. I think he covers himself in a way to not be responsible. He's a numbers guy. I get that. He's totally a numbers guy, and math is absolute. But by the same token, it was just too much for me. So, well, I enjoyed it, and it was a great documentary and won an Academy Award in 2004 for Best Documentary. I've never been a fan of Robert McNamara, and I'm not to this day, but it was nice to me. I've not seen this before. I know several of you had, Whitaker among them, but I know Mahoney's seen it, Sanders seen it. It's an interesting take on things and an interesting history peek into Johnson's career as president. And maybe you liked it and maybe you didn't. That's what I got.
Big gulp.
I'll start. I'll go one further than Madsen. The big problem I have with this is that there was no formal apology from Robert McNamara to America for what he did, and that should have been said repeatedly during this thing. And I also think he shaded the truth. In fact, history points out that he did, in fact, shade the truth. While he did express some support for Kennedy withdrawing troops before 1963 and beforehand, Robert McNamara was the right-hand man to Lyndon Johnson in escalating the war all the way through. And he should be regarded as a war criminal. What he and Johnson and that administration did to affect America from those days forward to right now is just inexcusable. I mean, there's one point where they acknowledge in there that the first incident in the Gulf of Tonkin was at best a mistake and at worst a lie. They didn't go into how they manipulated or inflated the battle situation in Vietnam. Robert McNamara takes very little blame. As close as he gets is he's asked by Morris at one point, so you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. He said, well, I guess so. Which doesn't meet my test. The other thing I wanted to, there are two other points, if you'll let me for a second. Number one is,
wait 1 second. Do you have like am I hearing like two microphones or something?
Yeah,
I'm hearing that too.
Yeah.
Got
Yeah.
a bad echo. You've got a real bad echo, yeah.
Because I think your take on it is really good, but
how about now?
Keep
Say
talking.
Check 1, 2, 3.
Still there.
Is that better?
It's
No.
less, but better.
It's not disconcerting. It's just there. Okay, it's disconcerting.
Where's the disconcerting switch?
Yeah.
This disconcerting.
How about now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Still there?
That's better.
Much better.
All right. Anyway, two other things that I wanted to bring it up. There's a book that I think a lot of us should read to accompany this, and it's written by, it's called Dereliction of Duty, and it's written by a guy by the name of H.R. Masters, who most of us are probably familiar as he was Trump's second national security advisor. Right. Masters wrote this in 1997, I think, late 1997, and he blames the Pentagon for losing the Vietnam War because the Pentagon didn't stand up to McNamara nor LBJ's sort of war creep in Vietnam. That the American war machine was built to either fight a war or not fight a war, but didn't know how to fight a war of escalation or war creep like this. And they were uncomfortable doing it, but they were also uncomfortable about calling out their immediate boss, the Secretary of Defense, and the Commander in Chief on a method that they didn't believe would work to begin with. And Kennedy and his brother and McNamara all not only went through the Cuban Missile Crisis, but they also went through the Bay of Pigs in 1961, shortly after they took office. And so these guys had very little credibility in the Defense Department and the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the American military's capability to do what they said they were going to do, or to do what they promised to do well. And so that's where the credibility gap, to use the term, sort of came from that. So I mean, think about this. This movie was all about Jack Kennedy, Robert McNamara, and Lyndon Johnson for the most part. You didn't hear them talk about the military because they didn't trust the military to do anything other than execute their own policies. And so Mencken or McMaster told that the war was lost by the Pentagon, not by the executive branch. And the third thing I wanted to bring up is this intertron technique that Morris used on this. I've used this before in documentaries, and what it looks like is, imagine the screen that you're looking at right now would have just say me in it and not the rest of us, okay? And the screen that I would be looking at and you would only have you in it. So it's going to be two images. It's not just going to be a flat lens that you're looking at. You're actually looking at an image of who you're talking to, even though the person you're talking to may be 10 feet away. You're still looking at him, looking at them through an image rather than looking at them in person. And it's a different way to do an interview, but once you get used to it, it allows you the opportunity to really look into somebody's face and eyes when they're talking to you, and make some pretty intimate judgments about what they're saying. So,
So is that a pretty standard issue kind of thing?
Well, it's used a lot now. I think Morris may have invented it or was used sparingly before then. I've used it a couple of times on special project documentaries. It's kind of a pain in the butt to set up just for a regular slapdash thank you ma'am interview, but if you're doing a long form thing, I imagine there's a lot of that. So anyway, that's me. I really enjoyed watching this a second time, and got even angrier at McNamara. And then the other thing is, I think Philip Glass's music is brilliant in this thing. I mean,
Yes.
it helps you concentrate. So anyway, that's it. All right, I'm done.
Good job. I agree.
Philip Glass did the music. So
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I don't watch I usually don't watch documentaries about war. Actually, for the longest time I had the hardest time just watching any kind of movie regarding war, especially the Vietnam War, obviously because I had someone that that I lost in Vietnam. And I've always been against the war. But in terms of this, I thought the way it was set up with the lessons learned and the 12 lessons, I thought that was a great way to someone, like he said, that has hindsight, can look back and say, here are some of the lessons I needed to learn, or we all needed to learn, or whatever. And I thought that was good. I did think that he's very smart. I liked that he was very smart. I think when you think back along that time, we think so differently now than we did back then. At least, well, like all of us, as we get older, we get smarter, we do better. And I thought when he said that he made mistakes and that anybody in war makes mistakes, I kind of took that as somewhat of a um, apology. Not really, not, but somewhat. So I really enjoyed it. I just finished watching it, as a matter of fact. I kind of wrote some notes, but I don't know if well, I talked about Philip Glass doing the music. I think the music was wonderful. Um, I love the fact that he was so smart and that he loved philosophy and ethics courses. Boy, do we need that in, I mean, it should be a requirement for everybody that's in um, politics, in my opinion. Being the youngest professor at Harvard, when he said it takes 120 hours of study before talking to Congress, and each hour of talking took about 10 hours of study. He studied. I mean, that's one of the things. I mean, this is what I came across, is that the man was brilliant. I think, and I think that he also didn't believe that he was that he had enough knowledge to be Secretary of Defense, but he was going to do it for the country. I think what he thought he was doing was right. I mean, I've always been against the war, but I thought this was done really well, and it gave me more of an understanding. So I really enjoyed it. I thought that he was smart. He was emotional. I think when he talks about there's certain things, you know, when he got emotional, I could see this person is a thinking human being at 85 years old and still smart. And I think he had a sense of thought he was doing the right thing at the time, and still, and I guess that's why he still thinks that way. I don't necessarily agree, but I think that he believed that he was doing the right thing, or at least uh, backing up, his his commander in chief. So that's kind of what I got.
One thing that I wanted to understand was the definition of what is fog of war, because it didn't make any sense to me after seeing the documentary. But I found a thing that said it's the difficulty of making decisions in the midst of conflict.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Ebert said the effect of the fog of war is to impress upon us the frailty and uncertainty of our leaders. And I think in some of the film, you could see that in their faces and what was going on, that it was very, very stressful, the decisions that they had to make. I'm not saying I support their decisions, but just the fact what they were up against. And you pick a card and hope it's the right one. So that's all.
I forgot about the 11 points. The documentary. I believe one of the first ones, you have to have empathy for the enemy or something like that. Mahoney, did you agree or not agree with the 11 points? And do you think he really believed in those 11 points? And do you think his decisions were based on those 11 points?
I thought his 11 points were very interesting, especially the one about empathizing with the enemy. Bush ignored that in Iraq and to some degree in Afghanistan, and certainly LBJ and McNamara ignored that in Vietnam. Yeah. You can make a case, and I happen to agree with this, and they address this a little bit in the documentary, that this was a civil war that the Vietnamese had been involved in, going all the way back to Japan's occupation of Indochina in World War II, through through some communist domination, through the French domination, through the American domination, and that this was a civil war or a war of liberation on behalf of the Vietnamese, and America never ever got it, and accepted that. In fact, there's a woman that is credited in the credits for this thing as in the acknowledgments. Her name is Frances Fitzgerald, and she wrote a wonderful book called Fire in the Lake, and it lays out the natural history of the Vietnamese dating back to almost the beginning of them as a people, and their struggle over hundreds of years to not be dominated by somebody. And whether it was the French or the Americans or the Chinese or the Japanese, it's just been an ongoing struggle. And the U.S. never ever got that. They always insisted that they were protected against the domino theory, when it was the domino theory was an invention of the West, and not viewed that way by the Vietnamese at all. Sorry.
Right.
I thought the math part was interesting. This guy was doing this stuff before Excel spreadsheets, but some of those the analysis that they were flashing up there, no matter what, that was really I thought that was really interesting as well.
Yeah.
And I just enjoyed it. I do like documentaries. And Mike, I like that you kind of zero in on that genre a lot, and I appreciate that. I thought this was interesting, and just an insight into a period of time that had a lot of weight for all of us, back in the day. So, good pick.
Yeah, good pick.
I thought, somebody was asking I guess it was Pete was asking about the 11 lessons, but I thought it was more of a reflection. I don't think it was anything he had in front of him at the time. I think the whole film was a reflection on, what he would do looking back.
Hindsight.
And the lessons that he learned from that. So I don't know that he was looking to those lessons, but I thought, I felt like he fell into Johnson's lap, really. His preference would have been to have had Kennedy for his leader, and he could have, done things would have been so much different. So I think the whole thing with Johnson was, wasn't completely of his doing, and he was just reflecting on that the whole time. But the other thing I wanted to mention was, I liked that one comment that he made where he said, when you answer questions, he said, don't answer the question that's given to you. Answer the question that you wished had been given. And I thought, that's really smart, and a lot to do it in all kinds of categories. And
that's
I'm sure Mike Mahoney saw that all the time.
That's Mahoney's life.
Yeah.
But I think that was a great quote, and it's like kind of applicable to us, if you kids or anybody ask you a question, don't exactly answer the question they gave you. Answer the question you wish they would have given you.
Politicians always answer what they want to.
That's right. They never answer the question that they're asked.
Right.
Never.
Right.
Unless you take pains to box them in and cut their logic off on it. But Bill, to your point, after Kennedy got murdered, Johnson wins a term of his own, so he's elected. If McNamara was truly uncomfortable with LBJ or the way he saw things playing out, the obvious thing to do would have been to resign at the beginning of Johnson's full term. I mean,
Exactly.
he had an opportunity there. Yeah, he wasn't. I mean, he wasn't enlisted for 7 years. He could have.
But
He could have got out.
But didn't he say there that, or Johnson said when you and Kennedy kept on saying you wanted to de-escalate the war, I kept silent. I kept silent, and so I don't know. I mean, I'm just, again, I don't know nearly what you guys know, but at the same time, from this, it seemed to me that if Johnson kept silent, was so against what Kennedy was doing, then how would McNamara know how Johnson thinks until he's already in the position? He's already thinking that he's more in line with Kennedy, and he ends up being, wanting to escalate the war. So, I'm not trying to give him an excuse. It's just from looking at it from my perspective, which is pretty not that knowledgeable. It seemed to me that two things could be: either he wanted to stay in to try to get Kennedy's way involved, or to just go along with the commander in chief. I don't know. I mean, it just seemed I just couldn't see him stepping down. It didn't seem like that was his persona at all. But what do I know?
Well, he would have had the remainder of the term that Johnson filled out from Kennedy to kind of get a read on him. You know what I mean? So he would have had the ability to know what how Johnson thought. Just Bill, the 11 points. You think those are reflections? Those are more like him looking back. This is like what he learned, because just like talking about Vietnam, not empathizing the enemy, not having empathy for that. He clearly, as you said, Mike, that was clearly not what he was doing at the time. So these must be more things he developed, or these are lessons that he learned at the end of his career, looking back, right? Is that kind of what you're saying, Bill? Because that would make more sense.
Yeah. I mean, he probably had them, but I mean, I think that the film was probably put to him that way. What's the structure of the film, and these are points he put together, maybe for the film. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think I agree with Donna that he's a very organized guy and very research oriented, and that he took a long, hard look at his life and tried to distill it down into things that he could pass on to people who would be in similar situations in the future. Whether he was right or wrong, some of those insights I think were very useful and would give people a way to approach difficult situations. He was in a lot of difficult situations. Whether he made the right choice or not is certainly up for debate, but he was studious about how he did this, and he put it all together in a way that he could pass it on to people. I thought the structure was very clean. I thought the photography, the clips and everything were super clean. Really, there was no interference watching with this because of poor photography or anything else like that. So that's my take.
Yeah, Arthur?
I was 2 months old when Kennedy was assassinated. So I think I'd heard of McNamara, but I didn't really know anything about it. But I did enjoy the film. It was, from a historical perspective, the pictures and videos from the past were interesting. I know a lot less about the Vietnam War than I thought I did. So, one thing I found really interesting, and I think Mahoney touched on it, was that later after the war, they found out when he met the North Vietnamese leader that they were fighting for a totally different reason than what they thought.
Right.
They thought that we were trying to enslave them, which of course we weren't. Well, as far as I know, we weren't. But so I thought that was kind of interesting. But
Yeah.
yeah, I was entertained, and I think I learned some things. I'm learning more tonight.
So Jeff, do you think McNamara did his job well?
I
Both
think
Jeffs.
that, okay, I would say that I think he tried to, but he had a certain philosophic bent and he went with that. And I don't think he was slacking. I think he was sincere about his efforts, but whether he did the right thing, he kind of came across in the interviews as being sensitive to ethical things. As Donna said, he was interested in ethical issues, and so you kind of think, well, how could a guy with that kind of orientation not be aware of the implications of what he was doing? I don't know. I have to branch off a little bit here too to say that the North Vietnamese people had the sense that we were colonizing them and trying to sort of subjugate them, but you wonder how much of that was spin that they got from their own leadership, sort of like North Korea would do now, or Iran doing, completely turning their people against the West because that was their way of declaring power. I don't know where that North Vietnamese philosophy came from and if it was a real thing or if it was something they did to make us into a real enemy. I'm kind of interested in that idea.
Good point. Yeah.
He was very data driven too. I mean, getting back to the stuff that they would show, even talks about some of the decisions that he made when he got to the Ford Motor Company, helping decide what kind of cars to come out with. I mean, that to me, that was a major element of his personality, and what made him tick was the importance of data, right, wrong, or indifferent.
But also, I think it was beyond just the data, also figuring out what's hurting people. That's why I didn't see him as, I think a lot of I didn't see him as this really terrible person, because I think he looked at the accidents that were happening and why were they so he finds out why they're happening, and it's because of
right, yeah.
So it's like he was interested in saving people's lives. Seatbelts. I mean, he got seatbelts, and nobody would wear seatbelts back then. I mean, it was that kind of thing that I can't. There's such a dichotomy there that if he is so concerned about people's lives,
29 should fly higher or lower to kill more people.
Well, yeah. Well, I think it was more in terms of right, but it was in terms of targeting, targets versus just landing anywhere.
Well, that was LeMay that pushed for that, wasn't it? Though, I mean, that wasn't he.
Well, but the studies were something that McNamara did.
Yeah.
About whether higher flights or lower flights were going to be more productive, or more deadly to the U.S. troops.
And McNamara's advocacy of seatbelts was to increase the bottom line for Ford and sell more cars as much as it was safety, and perhaps even more.
Sure, but
so
certainly,
Mahoney, what do you think? We just saw a movie about Dick Cheney, another Secretary of Defense. Do you think he was better or worse than this guy?
I think he was worse, because he went into Iraq along with Bush and and corporate America under even more false pretenses than Kennedy, Johnson, and McNamara did in Vietnam.
Absolutely,
they absolutely fabricated an excuse to start a war with Iraq. So yeah, and I mean, the Afghanistan thing was in retribution for 9/11. Iraq was an unprovoked attack.
Right.
Let's take this. Going back to somebody commented about Eisenhower and the military-industrial complex
Before you get back,
a time or two ago, and are both of these circumstances a demonstration of that principle, that the war was fabricated to boost economy or to do some other kind of political agenda?
Yeah.
all wars are that way.
Well, yeah. All wars are economic, and Vietnam. Vietnam was part of the containment policy that was part of the entire strategy of NATO and the West, dating from 1945 forward, including the Bay of Pigs, containment in Europe, in Indochina. The Cuban Missile Crisis. It was all part of a strategy of containment of the Soviet Union, and the war in Iraq was simply provocation by the United States.
Right.
They both were. Vietnam probably had a much more broader policy footprint to rely on than Iraq.
Okay, thanks.
So,
yeah, but then you think about the.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Bill.
No, you haven't had much in there, so go ahead.
I was going to say, I always think about all these things as propaganda that we put out. The communists are all going to fall like dominoes if we let one go by. Never happened. Trickle down economics never happened. Destroyed Argentina, and some of the things the Milton Friedman people did down there. But I think it's all just an excuse to blow it over the people's heads and do whatever they want to, which is start a war and kill as many people as possible. I agree with Mike Matson when he said, I don't think this was apology in any way whatsoever. When I saw this, it pissed me off because he attempted to rationalize everything that he did. He could have cut. Why didn't he cut back on napalm used on kids? Why didn't he cut back on villages and just go for industrial areas? He didn't do any of that. They marched in there and unloaded as many bombs as they possibly could. It beefed up the military-industrial complex. There is a military base in almost every congressional district in America. Those Congress people vote for anything that means more money to the military. And when they got all that money, they blow it. And they do it by killing people. And then what happens in Vietnam? All of a sudden they say, this didn't work. Our whole thing that we had going, let's see if we can get the hell out of here and take a few people with us. And then they just took off, pushed helicopters off of aircraft carriers, $1 million F-16s, dumped in the ocean. What did we get out of all of that? Nothing. We got 59,000 Americans killed. And that's actually, a pretty nominal number when you think about all the people that ran through there. There were over 2 million people that were coursed in and out of Vietnam, sometimes more than once, just to show firepower. And the one thing they didn't do with Johnson, those recordings that he said, I don't know, I've seen several documentaries with him on the phone. He was trying to blow them back to the Stone Age. That was his goal. We're going to get them to knuckle under and do whatever we want. I didn't see those kinds of clips in this, To me, it was all geared towards McNamara getting his rationalization off his chest so he could die knowing that he explained why he did everything he did. I don't think he did a very good job of it. I don't believe a word of it. And I'm with Matson on that. It's just
Thank you.
Again, just pissed me off again. But it was a good documentary, I have to admit. The Orgasmatron or whatever you call that, Mahoney.
That's next week's movie.
Bananas.
It looked like they were going eye to eye there. They were like, you bet.
Hey, kids, I got to go. I'm sorry. We're getting closed out here.
Oh,
right.
happy hour's over, huh?
Yep,
Madison,
that's
the
it.
next time you host, make sure you have snacks for all of us, okay?
Yeah.
I'll try, Chris. Thank you.
But
Anyway,
pick.
All right, good pick, Matson. Good pick.
76 and sunny.
Yeah.
Great,
Mike,
great
pick.
pick, Michael.
Take care. Thank
All
you.
right.
Okay.
Mhm.
But anyway, I thought Mike did a great, Mahoney did a great job of really kind of explaining all this much better than filmmaker did. They had one thing in mind, and that was to let McNamara explain it the way he wanted to. And, that's what you get.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Sanders, the other thing to remember with this is, as much as we are bagging on LBJ and McNamara here, I believe as many or almost as many Americans died in the 4 years that Richard Nixon was president as the 26,000 Americans that died while LBJ and JFK were at the helm. And the heavy bombing you're talking about actually took place in Christmas 1972, just before Nixon announced peace through honor in January of 73. So, I mean, if McNamara was there for some sort of greater good, Nixon and Kissinger have even more blood on their hands for just using American firepower as a blunt instrument against the Vietnamese in '72. So a lot of blame.
And I was going to mention before I got carried away, I watched this on Canopy, and the next movie that came up, like when you're watching the credits of one thing, another thing that's coming up in this movie, it was a documentary on Kissinger and Nixon and what they did during the war. And I just said, I'm not watching that.
They're going so much.
After everything I just saw
this week's pick.
Yeah, that'll be another pick, but I'll watch it another time. But I don't. Kissinger was a war criminal, and everybody knew that, even when he died. But
yeah, there's a story that the old ABC anchor Peter Jennings went up to Kissinger in a restaurant in New York once, and obviously Jennings didn't care for him too much, and Kissinger had been back in the news for some other sort of offense that Jennings didn't like, and he said, "Dr. Kissinger, good to see you at the restaurant. Still a war criminal?" And then,
well, sometimes when you're a reporter or anchor man, you got to tolerate those things. No one does anything about that. We don't even go along with the world court at all.
No,
we won't play ball with them. We just, because 9 times out of 10, it's going to be one of our people that's going to be facing charges, or it's going to be one of our allies, like Israel.
Yeah,
or South Africa for a time as our ally. Why were we doing that? I don't know. Anyway, looks like we're starting to run out of time. Since we lost Matson, Bill, you started to say something. Go ahead and get it in.
Oh, I was just going to comment on Jeff's background. His picture was one of the 2 pictures where he said that about his disconnect, and and the one was that one, and he's talking to LBJ, and he thinks that LBJ is just sitting there thinking, you don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
The other one was the picture of him, remember? And he's sitting there and he's just kind of has his hand to his face, and he's like, he said, what was it? He just was under so much stress that they couldn't hardly take it or something. I thought those were pretty interesting pictures that he pointed out there. The other thing that I know we're running out of time, but I thought it was pretty interesting about the fire bombing in World War II. I mean, I never really realized. I mean, the way they
I didn't either.
in that, it's almost like, why did they drop the bombs? They're like almost
Exactly. I mean,
all
let's overkill. God.
they, but I guess the Japanese didn't give up. They weren't willing to give up, even though they were getting decimated. I mean,
There's a full body of thought on the end of World War II about whether or not Truman was justified on dropping those two bombs in light of what had happened with the firebombing of the rest of the major Japanese cities. I think the consensus comes out that it probably would have generated a million American casualties, not American deaths, but American casualties to invade the main island of Japan, and so and probably add another year easy to the war. So a lot of people believe that dropping the A bombs were justified, but you can get a pretty good argument in some circles of American history over that very question.
I thought the most compelling part of that segment of the documentary was they would put up the Japanese city and how many lives, and then the U.S. city equivalent.
Yeah, that was very good. Yeah.
Then they had another graphic in this thing that I really loved. It was the same sort of shot, an aerial shot of a battlefield target from above, an aerial shot, and rather than bombs, it was numbers that were dropped.
Yeah. Well,
look out for that number 5.
Yeah.
It was a good one.
Yeah, great pick. We got
That
recommendations real quick before we go on to let's do next week's pick, I guess, before you run done.
Okay.
I think that's me.
I think that's you, Pete. It's been so long, we don't know how this thing
I know.
Yeah.
I've been debating on 2.
I only want to do one.
Music.
No, I know. And
I did like the Sound of Music. It was a great movie. When I was 12.
2.
Okay. Winter's Bone from 2010.
Yeah.
Went to Jennifer Lawrence, John Hawkes.
Oh yeah.
Garrett Dillahunt. These are all actors you've seen a lot of stuff.
Walking Dead.
Yeah.
Walking Dead. I don't know how many you've seen. Sounds like some of you have seen it, but I thought it was a well done movie, and I thought Jennifer Lawrence did a phenomenal job in this movie. So that's my pick for next week, Winter's Bone, and it's got an Ozarks element to it. So there you go.
Do you know where it's streaming?
All the.
Oops.
You froze up on me. You got so excited.
Prime. Yeah, it's pretty easy to
It's
find.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Anybody could find it. So the Academy Awards came out.
Oh.
Nominations.
The nominations, yeah. I got my list together.
Nobody's going to remember who got nominated in 2 weeks. They're only going to remember who won.
Yeah. When is the Academy Awards? March usually, isn't it?
I think so.
And I'm not sure the exact date, but it is March something. Yeah.
The March 10th.
There you go.
I'll have to go look. I sent an email out about it, and I don't remember. Because it's my goal again this year to see all 10 best pictures, and I've got 4 down. So I better get on it.
Yeah.
What are they?
The 10?
No, well, maybe. Yeah, maybe. But
okay. American Fiction, Anatomy of a Fall, Barbie, The Holdovers, Killers of the Flower Moon, Maestro, Oppenheimer, Past Lives, Poor Things, and The Zone of Interest.
Wait, you mean Saltburn is not one?
No.
Or that Barry Keoghan shows up everywhere, doesn't he?
Who's seen Saltburn besides myself? Yeah.
Is it good?
Oh,
yeah.
It's memorable.
Oh man, remind me a little bit of the Ripley movie.
Did it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
a little. And
sure.
Jeff, I did watch Strangers on a Train. The Hitchcock.
Oh yeah.
That's a
Oh
great
yeah,
one.
that's a great
And
one.
that is very much like Mr. Ripley too. I think
Yeah.
that's where they got the original idea.
Yeah, that critic guy I've talked to had recommended that. He's recognized that.
Bill, it
Go ahead.
gives Flashdance a run for its money.
What did you say?
Saltburn gives Flashdance a run for its money.
Oh.
I'm not going to tell you the scenes, but my sister Margaret sent me a picture of a picture of people's faces as they're watching scenes of the movie. So
Oh wow,
the shock.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
Well, it's about time. We've had women in there all together many times. Now we got a man. Good. Good or bad, whatever.
I might have to go see it tonight.
Patty will love it. Patty will love it.
Oh yeah.
It's on Prime, Bill. You don't have to go to the movie theater.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You can just walk to the living room. Yeah.
Is it still 20 bucks? Is it 20 bucks on?
No, it's free.
No, it's free.
Free?
With the subscription on Prime.
Free?
Prime.
Free.
If you've got Prime, yeah.
You can't beat that. Probably will.
I've got the ultimate lightweight recommendation here. It's called Pignosis, and it's about the company that put together all the album covers in the 60s and 70s. It's the agency that did that, and I think it's on Netflix.
Sounds good.
It's lightweight, but Pignosis.
Pignosis.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, it's interesting how they kind of got in, and they started from nothing and just kind of buddied up to some of the like amazing stars in London when everybody was getting started and took off.
That's wild that they did almost every album cover for like an 8-year period too.
Oh yeah, amazing number of.
Who did the album covers?
Company called Pignosis. It was two guys, Powell, I think, and the other guy, I forget what his name was, but he was kind of pugnacious, and Powell was kind of like the photographer. He fell in love with photography at an early age, and just that took him into this whole business.
Is that a Netflix deal?
Mm-hmm.
I watched a good one on Netflix that it's called Queen Bees.
Oh yeah.
BEES, Queen Bees. And it's kind of sad. It's sort of maybe our future, but it has a lot of star power in it. It has Ellen Burstyn, James Caan, Anne Margaret, Jane Curtin, Loretta Devine, Christopher Lloyd. Hilarious parts, but it's also very serious, and it's based off of a true story, so doesn't take a lot of brain power, but it's fun to watch.
Anybody see any episodes of Masters of the Air on Apple yet?
No.
Oh boy,
I would recommend it. It's several segments, and you only get to watch 2 before you have to go once a week, which drives me nuts. But it's got Austin. What was the guy that played Elvis?
Butler.
Austin Butler stars in it, and
look who's here.
I'm sorry.
Look who's here.
Yeah.
Hi,
yeah.
Why? It's a thumbnail sketch of Gary.
He's so tiny.
Are you there?
Hello, Auckland. Can you read me, Auckland?
Yes.
We read you.
We
what
read
was his
you.
greeting? Pia something, he said in his email.
Oh,
there he is.
Oh, there you are.
You're an hour late.
And a day early. I don't know how you did that.
He when he heard it was 17 hours difference, he forgot about daylight savings time.
Right, there you go.
Gotta be
Sorry.
it.
Okay, we probably can't wait for him anymore. You go ahead.
Sorry, dude.
He's gonna miss the next Starlink, and that's it.
Yeah.
Get on in time for good night, everybody.
There you go. I also wanted to push True Detective on HBO.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
Oh,
pretty
yeah.
good, and it's getting better. And I like
Yes.
Jodie Foster really well.
I
I
do
like
too.
the whole kind of
Some of the
indigenous
reviews on
thing.
that have not been favorable, and they keep
I know.
comparing like the first season, which was excellent, but I've enjoyed it.
Yeah,
with her.
yeah.
And then I also wanted to tell everybody, Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning is now on Paramount Plus. Plus, you don't have to pay for that, Bill.
Saw
You can
that.
watch the latest Mission Impossible movie with a
Part one,
subscription.
right? Isn't there two
Paramount.
parts in that? Yeah, part one.
Yes.
Yeah.
They
Just
dropped the part one from the promoting this one. They just call it Dead Reckoning, but when you get to the end of the movie, it says end of part one. So
Yeah.
another
Yeah.
one's coming. But anyway, it was typical,
Yeah,
Mission
it's good.
Impossible kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It was good.
Yeah.
I've been waiting for that one to get out of the 1999 part, get into the 299 part. Now it's with the subscription, so that's great.
Well, I don't know if I recommend it, but if you like action, my husband really liked it. The Reacher, Jack
Yeah.
Reacher. I've read
Yeah.
the Lee Child books, and so it's it's pretty good. It's the second season, and it's pretty good.
I watched that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's it is a Jack Reacher, typical Jack Reacher book, but way better than the one that Tom Cruise did.
How
At
does
least
he
I think.
walk that way?
Hey, Joan.
Hey, Joni.
Hi, Joan.
So I didn't think I'd seen anything recently, but I did almost get Fargo, the current season of Fargo done, and it's been pretty good.
Yeah.
I heard somebody describe it as being the most like the original movie, and I can see it. It's
I
got
love it.
John Hamm and the gal from
Ted
Ted
Lasso. Yeah.
Yeah. Juno Temple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good.
So did you make it to the 9th episode, Bill, where there's still one left?
I'm on. As soon as I can get back to it, I'll be on the 9th episode.
Yeah.
There's 10, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, well,
Well, I
Oh, and
guess
then
it's
I
about
wanted to
that.
say I wanted to say one more thing. Chris, did you mention Flora and her son a couple of weeks ago?
I did not.
Did anybody? No? Well, then I'll throw that one out. That one's on Apple. It's a lady that was who was an Irish actress that was in The Sisters. She's
Mhm.
doing her own little movie. It's just a little movie, and it's not a blockbuster or anything, but she's hilarious, and it's kind of a romantic comedy, but it's really between her and her son instead of her and her boyfriend.
And what's it called, Mike?
Flora and her son.
Okay.
He's always causing trouble and getting in trouble with the authorities, and she's trying to bail him out. Figure out that music comes together for them. And so anyway, it's a cute little thing on Apple. All
right.
Okay.
Well, obviously we can't get a word in edgewise since Gary got on the call. So
Yeah, I know. So
Yeah.
Whitaker, can
Oh,
you
he's giving you a cold stare there, Pete.
We don't have the Hollywood Squares view of who's participating
Oh,
today.
there he is.
I think we can hear it. Sort of.
Well, we had Matson. He was here, but he left already.
Yeah.
He got booted.
Who
Yeah.
else?
And I got to go too.
all right.
All right.
All right, everybody.
I'm out of here.
All right, all.
You're talking.
See
Bye,
ya.
everybody.
Next week.
Bye,
Bye.
Gary.
Bye.